Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Isaac. As Isaac, I always feel like there's a lot of choices that you can make that can result in vastly different runs, and obviously besides just using D6 in the different situations, it can entirely depend on your mood. So if you want a breaking run, you might try to go for the secret rooms or maybe the shops and reroll those items, or if you just want a strong run, you might go to the angel deals or devil deals and reroll those items instead. And of course in some situations I tend to do one, and in some situations I tend to do the other. But in this particular one, even though I had a D6, I later replaced it with another active item, which doesn't happen often, but it does turn out that it was just a better version of D6. So I got a blank card and also a Purple Rune, which allowed me to essentially carry out my Master Evil plan in order to get a relatively higher ranking in the end. So before I get into details of how I actually did that, I would first like to mention that this is a Mom's Heart run, which means that after we do boss rush, we essentially have infinite time in the world. And I would imagine that this strategy wouldn't really particularly work if there was Hush to beat, or at least it would work, but we would have to beat Hush first. But the thing is, there's a few decisions, or at least a few choices we have to make here. First of all, we need to find a way forward. We need to find a way to actually get to Shoal. But in dailies that go to Mom's Heart, that's usually not even that big of a concern, because if there is a sacrifice room on Womb 2 or Utero 2, you would generally want to take it, because there's no guarantee that there was gonna be a sacrifice room on Shoal, and if there isn't, it's a much better idea to go to the sacrifice room via the dark room, go to the dark room via the sacrifice room from Womb 2 or Utero 2, because that just leads you into more points. So even though it's not that big of a deal, it's still important for us to find the Awa's room, because overall that just means we have more options, and in case there isn't a sacrifice room on Womb 2, we can still go to Shoal and maybe find one there, and of course we just get exploration bonus for just going there. So that's our master plan whenever we play a Mom's Heart daily. But those decisions change depending on the circumstances. And in this particular case, even though I thought it would be really important to actually get that, I knew that I could, just with the items that I had, I could force certain things into existence. And the main thing to realize here is that as soon as you include something like a Forget Me Now, then it becomes an immediately good idea to go to Shoal, because that means that you can use the Forget Me Now then, and that essentially means you have 2 more floors of exploration. So what's great about it, if you go to Shoal and there's a Forget Me Now, what you can do, if there is a sacrifice room, you can take the sacrifice room, the entirety of the dark room once, then use the Forget Me Now to do it again, and if there isn't a sacrifice, you can just use the Forget Me Now on Shoal, and if there happens to be a sacrifice room, you can use it. So essentially it's like the best of both worlds, and the Forget Me Now really changes the entire structure of or how the game is played. Essentially it gives you another chance of finding that sacrifice room. So that's what I was going for here mainly, and that's why I didn't take the sacrifice room on Womb 2 and Utero 2, because I knew I could force a Forget Me Now into existence. What happened, or as it turned out, which was a bit surprising in some sense, was that, like I said before, I did replace the D6 with a blank card, and later on that did turn out to be a really good idea, because not only can I hold a Purple Rune, but I also got a deck of cards, which allowed me to hold another card. And you might see where I'm going with this, but as soon as you can hold 2 cards, and essentially one of them serves as a pedestal spawning machine, and the other one is a Purple Rune, you can use those in tandem to essentially get items from any item pool that you want. So let's say that if you had something like, let's say that you're in the chest and you go to the secret room and you place, or just not a secret room, any room, and you place the fortune teller down and you explode it, and when it explodes, what can end up happening is you get an item out of it, because on the chest and the dark room, whenever you explode the machine, you get an item automatically. So now you have a pedestal. If you place it in the secret room, you can use that pedestal to re-roll it, and as soon as you re-roll it, you're gonna get an item out of the pool where the item is currently located, so you would get a secret item pool. So that might not seem like very impressive, and you're saying this only applies to the chest and to the dark room, and you're very much right, but oftentimes when you do go to those objectives, it's probably a good idea to hang on to the judgment card and maybe even a Purple Rune, so you can try to finagle something out of that. But more importantly, if you have a judgment card, and especially with a blank card, you can do the same, because you can get items basically on a whim whenever you place a judgment down. So either be it a devil beggar or just a regular coin beggar, you place that down in a secret room, you play them as much as you can, you get as many items as you can, and then you start using your other faucet, so the Purple Rune and the blank card, to reroll items in the secret room to get something good out of it. So you might be asking, but why the secret room? Why is that such a good thing? Obviously, you can get some really good items out of it, but I don't see the point of this. And the reason is that the secret room actually contains the highest frequency, or at least relative to its item pool, of items that can give you something, or at least allow you to break. You can get their skeleton keys, so 99 keys, 99 bobs from Pyro. You can also get the shovel, which allows you to go forward on a round that goes maybe to only Mom's heart. And you can get a Forget Me Now and also a blank card, but we already have blank cards, so we don't really need that. So that's 5 items in total, which either really boost your score or just allow you to break the game entirely, and that's usually a pretty good proposition. So in this case, what I was mainly going for is that Forget Me Now, like I mentioned before, because that will allow me to essentially do Shoal twice. And I was kind of in a very tricky spot at some points in the game, because I had to play the Devil Beggars, and if there was a sacrifice room, I can't remember if there was a sacrifice room on Shoal, on the first Shoal, because if there was, I definitely should have taken it and then used the Forget Me Now on the second floor. But the problem was, you have to get to the Forget Me Now first in the first place, which means you have to play the Devil Beggars. And because I was kind of unlucky, I had to play 3 out of the 5 beggars that I spawned were Devil Beggars, and I had to play them. And even though you can play 2 at the same time and you increase your chance of actually getting a payout, it still does take a lot of your HP away, and I just couldn't find a way to actually replace it and regain it. So that was maybe the only issue that I had. So if there was a sacrifice room on Shoal, I wouldn't be able to take it because I didn't have enough health before getting that Forget Me Now. And of course, in that situation, you might be saying it's a better idea to just go to the dark room and not bother with the Forget Me Now at all, and maybe try to break the game in there and then use the Forget Me Now in the dark room. And that's a very good point, and I just didn't think of it because I'm a dummy. I was really going for that play, but I will look on the replay if there just happened to be a sacrifice room there, and I just managed to make a very grave mistake. Because if I did, I should have definitely gone to the dark room and then used the Forget Me Now, or at least broke the game in that room, and that would have been even easier because it wouldn't require me to actually sacrifice my health away. Even if there were Devil Beggars, I could just place them in the secret room and blow them up, like I said before, to get items out of them, and then of course use my blank card to reroll. And I think that would have been a better proposition, but let's see if that's how it turned out. Maybe I just didn't have enough health at all, or maybe there just wasn't a sacrifice room there in the first place and I'm just worrying about nothing. But definitely, if I did do that mistake, it's very important to note, because you just have to keep it in mind for the next time you try to do the same. So in this case, there was a sacrifice room on Neutral 2 on Boom 1, but I didn't take it because of the reasons I just was talking about, and let's just see what happens in Shoal. So up until this point, let's just talk about the run a little bit. It was a really strong run. The first Devil Deal immediately gave me Brimstone, which was a pretty good compromise, or at least I was in a pretty good position to go off from here. And of course later on I did get also a bunch of damage up, and it's really helpful because I also got a Lump of Coal, and if you don't know, Lump of Coal plus Brimstone essentially means that you can melt anything that's more than a room away, and whenever you enter boss rush, that means you can instantly melt the boss which is on the other side of the room, which means you essentially only have to fight one, but also because you pierce through both of them, it just makes the job a lot easier, and you can just complete the entirety of boss rush in like a minute or two, which is not that big of a deal. But now that I'm looking back at it, there wasn't a sacrifice room here, so I didn't make a mistake. So thankfully I did make all the right plays in order to get as far as possible. So you can see me just collecting and going around collecting as many batteries as possible and popping down as many judgments as I can. As soon as I get 4, I use my judgment card and start playing them, and of course I played into the level that I can, and to some extent I did try to go further, maybe a bit unlucky that 2 items spawned on each other, but I figured because I have 3 more charges, so discharge 2 more batteries in the shop, and if there was really a necessity, I could just use my Percheron as it is. So essentially I have 4 times, I can reroll 4 times, and rerolling 4 times with 3 items out of 12 items, out of something like 24 total items, just means I have a really good chance of actually finding the Forget Me Now. And of course I did get it very soon. I replaced it with a book from the library, so it's just in a safe place, and I tried rerolling even more, just in hopes of maybe getting something like a roll liver, so I would be a bit more safe on the next floor. I didn't get it, I didn't feel too bad about it. I did get an Eternal Heart, which means I have 2 health. Thankfully I didn't need any of that health because I was able to make it through without too much of a hitch, and of course just because we have all of this consumable generating items, I wasn't in a bad position for too long. So all in all, it did turn out to be a really interesting run, in one of those runs where my brain not really had to work, but I had the chance to actually employ a strategy that I've thought about and actually theorized about not still in a video not too long ago. And in that one, it didn't work out because I was maybe a bit unlucky. I didn't really think it through that well. But in this case, because I knew what I could do and what the propositions were and odds were, I really felt like I could make it work. And it did turn out to be a fun one. And of course, if you played the daily yourself, I'm interested in which direction it went, because I can see this going in a variety of directions. You could have taken the sacrifice room on the womb too, and I feel like you were entirely justified in that. And then maybe you find Forget Me Now on that floor, which I also could have done, and then you can do an entirety of Dark Room 2, but I'm not sure if the damage penalty actually offset what you get out of it. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I just decided to go this route because I thought it might be a bit more optimal, because that means we can essentially explore an entire floor once, and if there was a sacrifice room, I would also be able to explore the Dark Room itself. Thankfully, because our damage is quite high enough, we don't really have to worry about fighting Mega Satan, and there's nothing like getting that double shot from the Bookworm transformation and just melting an enemy instantly. So we did finish in the 22nd place with something like 42,000 points in total. Our damage penalty wasn't that high, which is quite promising. I think I got hit like 4 or 5 times in total, so I think something like 4 or 5 full hearts. Item penalty was a bit high, and I tend to be a bit ashamed whenever that happens, but I did learn, especially with some of my latest dailies, that you shouldn't really be that worried about picking up items, because the item penalty usually is worth it, because you're gonna get something good out of it in return. And in this case, I did get a lot of damage, and if those damage items just saved me from one hit, I think it was already worth it. So a really enjoyable run, at least for me. I was able to put some of my gray cells to use, and I was actually able to make it work. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.